Hi, Judy. Welcome to Soul in the Game podcast. I am very honored and excited to have you on the show because my son, who was like 3 year old, started Montessori at your school. That's Spondeo. That was your school, Spondeo Montessori in Gilbert, Arizona, and now he is in second grade. But we have maintained communication, we have maintained relationship where we talk or exchange ideas about scooby make kombucha making. So I'm very excited to talk to you, especially for this Earth Day episode. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and to share anything I'm able to share that will be helpful to you and to other people.
Definitely, definitely. So you were a Montessori teacher, and you are still Montessori teacher. Are you still teaching now?
I actually am still teaching, but in a different type of context due to COVID-19. I am a Montessori certified teacher, as well as I have my bachelor's degree in education, and Montessori is part of my graduate work. And so I'm actually working with a family in a private home right now, just through all of the hiccups and accordion type timelines that we're experiencing between in-person school and then screen time school. So supporting them and through that adventure is very different, but it also provides a lot of opportunities, which I have seen obviously firsthand with that family.
Yeah. You know, when I was when my son was 3 year old, and as a new parent with other work commitments, it was there's so many questions. As a parent, I'm sure many parents go through that. Like, am I doing this right? Is this the right way to do it? Because we lack also guidance of our parents being present in that situation. And anytime I come up with some behavioral thing, for example, I get fear is the biggest thing, like scared. Oh my gosh, my son did this. Is this going to be like permanent behavior as he grow up? Is it going to be the same? That type of thought that goes in my system. And I remember one incident. I think my son was aggressive with a friend, and I came and I was like, oh, I'm concerned about this, and you were so patient. This is normal. Every kid goes through this. And and I felt so much better talking to you. So how do you see that type of behavior with parents? Like, they're so stressed out, and is that common across?
It actually is. And I think what happens is you become attuned to it. So a
Mm,
process of learning to be aware of the emotional signals, the body language that and the tone of the voice and all those little subtle cues that come with and help your emotional IQ. And
yeah.
so when a parent comes into me um, physically, I can pick up on a lot of language. There's a lot of data coming in. And
Mhm.
actually, I actually prefer to see a family or parents in person versus conversing via email on any type of subject matter that needs
Mhm.
extra attention or just extra support, because the face-to-face contact, I mean, obviously we're on a Zoom call, so that can help too, but and in the context of what we're living right now, but in person, face to face really, really helps to tap into all these subliminal messages for via
Mhm.
body language, but also it gives you that connection and that eye contact that's necessary and primitive to human beings, in order for us to feel calmer and connected. Because when we feel connected, we calm down. We have a tendency to calm down, and then we have those mirror neurons too. And all of these techniques that I'm talking about, these are just they're ingrained in us, and we often have to be aware of them and facilitate them and tap into them and grow those strengths in order to connect with one another. But in that process, we are able to move forward and to communicate and to understand at a better level that overall helps not only the child, but also the parents as well to navigate those developmental changes and milestones that children naturally go through. And we as parents go through too, because we're not a child anymore, and our experiences can be and are completely different, similar, but completely different from our own children. And then also from our parents too. So there's a lot of moving parts. And the best way I can say is how I accomplish that is through learning myself about different ways to communicate with people, but mostly in person, absolutely in person, and talking to.
Mm.
So
Talking to parents, yeah. Do you see the difference in is it more of a training as a teacher, or is it more of a Montessori style of philosophy?
So Montessori in itself has its roots in respect for oneself, for others, and for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that foundation, um, often Montessorians are naturally led into and also trained in Adlerian child psychology, which
Mm-hmm.
is freedom within boundaries, which is it allows for consequences versus punishments, and it's behavior related. So and the theory is that every behavior has an underlying motivation behind it. And so a lot of observation and then being able to work forward within the structure of the psychology with the child. And it also, there's Adlerian child psychology and there's Adlerian adult psychology too. And I'm more familiar with the Adlerian child psychology and how it presents itself. We utilize that in the Montessori classroom because of the respect for the child and respect for the environment, and being able to control the environment and not the child, allowing the child to have freedom within boundaries, and they can make a choice. We give choices, two choices for them. You can do this or you can do this, and let them have that power, that sense of power, and that ownership and account and agency in their decision that they make, which helps to build their self-esteem and self-confidence as well. So it's a big it's a big component to help these children grow into everything that they're created to be, and have good, healthy boundaries for themselves and for others and for the environment.
Yeah, that is. I think that even for adults, we need those reminders. uh, as I mean, that's such a amazing foundation for children to have. And I remember visiting Montessori's, and in Spondeo Montessori, for example, all those everything was like at child level. The tables and even the things were all size of children, and they weren't even plastic. For example, they were like real glass or real ceramic, and that can fall and drop and shatter everything. And um I think Ishan, my son, he got used to doing that. And when we were visiting some place, he was handling the glass thing by himself. And my mom was there. She was like, "Oh my gosh, glass item! It might break and fall. I mean, fall and break and hurt him." And I was like, "It's okay. He's used to it. It's a different thing for an adult to get used to that." And we are always driven by, oh my gosh, this might happen, that might happen. Is that a common theme across parents or across people who are not used to?
So Montessori really actually exposes a lot of parents to the actual capabilities of their children, and to actually trust their children, and then also to have a game plan for when things do break and shatter, because that's life. Things break and shatter, not only literally but figuratively too. And how do we then emotionally process and move through that situation, and then resolve the situation, such as when a cup drops, there's so many things happening. There's gravity, there's the shattering of a different type of substance, there's the shards of glass that go everywhere, and there's a safety factor that comes into play when that happens. And so there's so many moving parts that occur just in that single lesson. Look at it as a lesson. It's not a shame-based thing or anything like that. It's like, well, this is an opportunity for us to talk about and see what happens and what we need to do and how our body language needs to be during a situation like this. So when I talked about mirror neurons, the teacher's calm, and then therefore the children are calm and say, okay, we need to make sure everyone's safe. I need you to stand over there and stand over there. I'm going to get the broom. Johnny, will you go and grab the dustpan? Janie, will you go and grab some wet paper towels, squeeze them out for me, please? And those might be the older students in the classroom or the younger, but someone that that has that skill set. And then they watch you clean up the glass, and you might talk about it as you're doing it. Therefore, it just becomes this whole entire lesson. Parents in our day and age, especially with the invention of plastic, in our culture also always wants to make everything easier, faster, more efficient. And in some areas, that's absolutely appropriate, but it's not really appropriate for the age of a child. I'm not saying that, an infant should be walking around with a glass, bottle, but they do now make silicone covers for those glass bottles. So there's less exposure of BPA or any other, unknown plastic leaching chemicals into the child's beverages that they're drinking. But the point I'm making is that no, most parents are just thinking plastic and things that are convenient and things that won't break and won't cause a mess, because that mess in an adult's brain is, it just takes more time, and then I can't get to the next thing. But if you think about and you slow down to the pace of a child, everything is all about the process. It's not about the product at the end. It's about the process. And in Montessori, we are trained and we are taught that. And when you do that, oh my gosh, just the pressure just comes off of you, because you're not thinking about the product all the time. You're actually in line with how the child's development works, and then also how they get from point A to point B. And to be honest with you, they don't really care about their picture at the end. They care more about the process. And it's interesting that we can take on so much of that and be reminded of the beauty of that with working with young children and having young children, and being able to understand that and step in line with what they're doing, what they're learning. It helps us to slow down areas of our life and to actually re-obtain that peace and that calmness and that process that comes with learning. And we should always be learning all throughout our life. Yeah. So to answer your question, most parents don't, and grandparents and anyone that has not been exposed to Montessori and or has not come into this understanding, they're looking for the quick fix. They're looking for the fastest way to clean something up or prevent things. So, and in Montessori, we allow things to happen. But of course, right, we mitigate it though. We're not going to have, like in a toddler room, we're not going to have 5 glass items. We might only have 1 glass item, because if it does break with toddlers, their mentality is a little different. They're like, ooh, what's going on? And that's fine that they're what's going on, but we want to be able to mitigate, not, 5 things breaking at once. And plus their gross motor skills and fine motor skills are still being attuned. And so their grips and everything might not be as great. And that's fine. We developmentally make things developmentally appropriate for the age group of the child and for children that are actually in the classroom. So.
Yeah. I love what you said about process. What if kids pay attention to the process, and we as adults, we are trying to avoid the process. It's such a contradicting thought for, like, if I think about it, it's the more manual it is, the better they learn, the better they understand than learning. It's more about the understanding of how things work, and more manual it is, the more understanding it will be for the children. And I grew up in that setting. I didn't go to Montessori, but we were forced to grow up in that kind of setting, with slow down pace and more manual work, more process. Now I'm kind of, I may avoid certain things. Oh, it's too much process, but that makes so much sense. I have that understanding, or deeper, I can think through deeper because of that exposure to the process that I was as a child, than just not avoiding them. Um, yeah, I really like that. And I like that, you used to have real chickens running around in in the back, and kids would be running around, and they would go and pick up the chicken and then pet it, and I really like that. So, how did you come up with that idea?
So in Montessori environments, they want you, there's a special part called care in the environment, right? We talked about how, respecting the environment, and that can range from pushing in your chair, sweeping underneath your table, washing your dishes after you use them, putting the work back on the shelf in a neat and tidy fashion for the next friend to use. And so part of that is caring for animals, and and plants too. So living things. We actually specifically have a work that's called non-living and living, and we categorize and designate what's living and not living. So it's very integrated into the entire Montessori curriculum. And so one of our teachers suggested chickens. Unfortunately, the zoning that we were in and everything like that, we were able to have chickens.
Hmm.
Giblert, Arizona is, historically more of the farming area of Arizona. And so
Right.
I think in Phoenix, you're not allowed to have roosters
Yeah.
because they make noise. We didn't want roosters. We sent them to a place that if we did end up with a rooster, we would send them to this lovely lady that lived in a place where she could have roosters. And we also specifically looked for the silky bantam breed, which are
Mhm.
considered the teddy bears of
Oh, okay.
chicken worlds. And they're so soft and they're so freaking cute. And we that's another thing, we search out, in order to find a breed that's going to be conducive to the age of the children and everything like that, because we're teaching the children how to not only care for the animals, but specifically how you care and how you hold them and how you pet them. And a
Mm,
younger child doesn't have that. Their gross motor, fine motor is still developing. They're very much so gross motor, and so you have to teach them how to have gentle loving hands, and that of course carries over into being with their friends too, is having gentle loving hands. And but yeah, so they learn about these creatures that are alive, and we need to feed them, and we need to clean their cage, and we need to make sure they have water, and when they get to a certain age they lay eggs. And at one point we had one that had a prolapsed, and some of her innards came out. And unfortunately, we had a teacher on our teaching teams that her mom grew up with chickens, and so she knew what to do, and she knew that she had to push it back in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, chicken hospital 101. I'm like, oh my goodness. Then we actually ended up putting that particular chicken, doing some research, giving her some time. And she was in the hallway for the good week or two, right next to the toddler room that I was working in at the time. And the children, toddlers, we're talking toddlers, they knew that chicken was in the chicken hospital. I called it this.
mm,
She's in the chicky hospital right now, and we need to be quiet and have calm bodies and check on her and make sure she's, has her water and her food. And of course, I'm modeling, as I'm modeling to you right now, how I'm having a
yeah.
voice, so they know how to, with mirror neurons again, how to behave around that chicken at that time. So these are all life circumstantial things that happen. And I have countless videos of toddlers and older, students too, working with these chickens and learning how to become comfortable around them. And we
Mm,
also did the life cycle of the chicken, and we would incubate the eggs as well. And then they would hatch and we would have them and then keep them in the classroom for a certain period of time. And the children would take turns holding the chicks too, to get them familiar with being held by humans too. So
Mhm.
there's a lot that goes into it, but so worth it, because
Yeah.
we have so many children that are just, I want to see the chickens. And some children don't want to see the chickens, and that's fine. You know, we respect where they are in that journey of being comfortable. But I can tell you, there were several children that would help them make the transition in the morning from their parent to into school, would be going to see the chickens, and their parents would say their goodbyes to their child when they were engaged with the chicken. The parents wouldn't disappear, because that's not appropriate either. They would say, okay, you know, you're with the chickens now, you're with Rosie, or I can remember some of the other names, Snowball. And then that child would have that connection now, that connection and that into her day, and make that transition even better. And so it's a really beautiful thing, very, very beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I could see that. It was my son was not into live animals that much, but he still appreciated or he would watch others do it, even though he wouldn't go and do it, pet the chicken himself. He would appreciate others doing it, and just sit and enjoy, watch that. That leads to an interesting topic that I want to, very curious about learning from you, is ecotherapy, and which I heard from you for the first time about, in a different perspective, as in a learning setting, right? So what is ecotherapy?
So ecotherapy, from my research, I've just actually stumbled upon it in the last couple of years. And I would like to best describe it as it's an umbrella over a lot of different types of opportunities and labeled therapies that involve the outdoor or working with the natural environment. So the way that I like to think about it in the context of working with young children, and what I've experienced with young children, is that sense of calm that they feel when they go outside, that sense of excitement, but then often a deeper type of peace that you can see in their body language when they're outside. Children have go through a period it's called a sensitive period, or Piaget called it a critical period. Montessori called it a sensitive period, where they have attention to very, very tiny things, which makes parents really nervous, because, you know, choking hazards. But if you think about it, when a child goes outside, they see the ants, they see the
Mm.
ladybug, they see these little tiny things, and they're so interested in them. And so that's actually really good, because that is a natural stimulation of their curiosity to learn and to observe. And we want to cultivate that. But in that process, they're calm, they calm down, and they're at that sense of peace. And then also there's more room for them to roam, and for them to, you know, get that gross motor, you know, practice and movement that their body is driving them to do. And then that's also, you know, outside gross motor movement, fine motor movement, exploring, discovering, seeing things. And in Montessori specifically, we have outdoor environment, and so there's work outside, and then there's specific work that needs to be done outside. So perhaps like nailing wood together, or walking around the garden and watering plants, you know, in the big garden, or attending to the chickens and things like that. Uh, and I just realized how special that is for, and unique that is for a child. And then also I found how I felt outside too, and recalled my own personal Montessori experience, and how not only I loved Montessori so much, but also being outside. And I'm
Mm.
still so drawn to being outside, and that feeling of just being still, and there's so much actually entertainment out there, but there's that calmness about it that comes along with it. It's very different from a screen time, you know, like Candy Crush, or I don't know, Clash of Clans, or you name
Mm.
it, any sort of like screen type of um, activity is very, very different from sitting down and being still and watching and looking for things, like almost like finding the hidden things in the picture, but you see a rabbit over there. Oh, what's the rabbit doing? Like, I wonder what they're going to do next. So if you think about all those questions that are coming up, that's just generating the natural curiosity of a child. And it's very satisfying because they're drawn towards it, and then they're finding out answers, but then also having more questions, which is natural and is what the human brain is designed to do. So I find that it can be very therapeutic. It's something we need. Absolutely. It's something we need. And then it can be therapy as well, especially as the rush of our culture and the screen time increases, as a babysitter for parents. And that's one thing we did at Spondeo as well. We did not have any screens at our school. The only time we had them would be during the summer, because we would go into our summer hibernation, is how we would call it. Magic school bus or something like that, for some transitions, because it's so hot out and we weren't able to go outside. But I would purposely allow parents, any working parent, working inside the home, working outside of the home, to give them that what I called the ace up the sleeve for 30 minutes, for 30 minutes of what the pediatric Academy of Pediatric recommends only 30 minutes for children over the ages of 2 to have 30 minutes of screen time. But that screen time, that 30 minutes was an ace up the sleeve for the parents. So when the parents came home, like, everybody needs a little bit of downtime, before moving to the next thing. Some people don't need it as much. Some people aren't aware that they need it. But anyway, to set yourself up for success, that would be an ace up your sleeve. So you can, watch 30 minutes of Magic School Bus. And while mommy, just takes like 10 minutes to just kind of meditate or yoga or something before, jumping into the next event for the sequencing of events for the evening. So yes, outdoors, it's so helpful in so many ways. And ecotherapy is emerging. I think there's a little more framework that's coming around it that actually really, really helps. And there's a lot of research out there as well. Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv, I want to say it. Love, is that how you pronounce it? And he actually has another book called Vitamin N, meaning for nature.
Nature, nice.
Vitamin N. And it talks about the green deficit. So I still have to go back in and research all of that, but I have seen it manifested in so many ways in children that what I will come across and what I'll read, I can easily identify that, or it just generates curiosity to see it transform itself. With the family that I'm currently working with, I built a garden at their house.
Wow.
So we could, and we do a garden report every day, garden report. And the greatest thing about gardening and all those things is that everything can spring from it. And that's a little bit more of a Reggio Emilia approach.
Yeah, right.
Is you have a subject matter, and then you spring from that curiosity into all areas such as like literature or science and math, and they're all integrated. And when things are all integrated and when children are interested, it's a no-brainer. They don't even know that you're trying to teach them a certain skill. So we built this garden outside, and we were able to incorporate growth in metric and in standard, English standard, and talking about why we have English standard and what the king said and all those things.
Oh, wow.
And go into that depth, and then talk about how many inches are in a just all the specifics from the macro of it down to the micro. And we grew snap peas specifically, and we're able to graph and calculate and see how many peas we were able that grew. We started out with the flower, the growth, and then flower came, and then we knew that there was going to be a pea, and we were happy that the bees were going to come and pollinate, and we would encourage the bees to come and pollinate. And it was just a lot of excitement, you know. And then if you think about it, it's not instant. It's not instant. It's we have to wait and see what happened, you know, yesterday between now and yesterday. What happened? Did it grow? It did grow. Yeah. So it's just so it taps into that being patient, and then that anticipation of excitement to see what's happened, what's changed. There's the keen observation, and then that generates more questions, and that generates more things. And I actually have been composting, vegan composting for a good two plus years now, and I had not emptied my composter because it just keeps on going down, 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 down.
Nice.
And I finally, in my move, I finally had to empty my composter. And we took that compost over to their house, and we integrated that into their garden. And they see what I put into my composter. And we were also, some pieces of plastic actually got into the compost, you know, by mistake. And I was able to show them as I was emptying, I'm like, look at what happened when this plastic was here. It completely stopped the whole process from happening. And then I also introduced the concept of composting to them by saying old plants can help new plants. So when you put the old plants in a composter, they break down into you know, bite-sized, you know, nutrients for the new plants to grow. So do you see how old plants help new plants, and how we can help that happen? And so it's so all encompassing, you know, it just encompasses everything from not only just the science, but then like a socially emotional type of awareness and stewardship and all those things. And wow, that just taps into the child's feeling of belonging and feeling loved, and reciprocating that out into the environment as well. And then having these connections, not only with the person that's guiding them, which would be in this case me guiding them along this journey, but also the connection with the earth. And because of that awareness, then they will see and start to notice things that children a century ago would naturally just notice. But now, because we have all these distractions, and we have these screens, and we have all these synthetic things that occupy our time and keep us from being in the natural world, it cuts off a part of us in so many ways, especially that deep peace, that deep connection, that deep nurturing that we all are capable of having it to a greater or lesser extent. It's just a matter of being able to give them opportunities and nurturing in it as well. And with that family as well, we talked about plastic waste, and I gave them an example of like the sea turtles. You know, they think that they're sea jellies. They see this plastic bag that looks like a sea jelly, and the sea jelly is their most favorite food, and then they eat it, and now they're starting to die because their stomachs are full of all these plastic products. So I explained to them, like, how can we reduce our use of plastic, and what can we do to be responsible with any plastic that we get from are we going to buy this object because it's in plastic, or can we find something different? So there's even planting seeds along that line as well, of how they can make a difference. Their small choices can make a big difference in the long run of things. So
Yeah, I love that. I think we need that in large scale.
well, we do need it in large scale, but
Yeah,
when we work with children and we plant those seeds, that's
that
bringing
becomes
the
a
next generation of normalcy. That's
yeah, yeah.
normal for them. So we're just
Right, right. Yeah,
restating what has been lost or filtered out, or taken
yeah.
away by the culture's influence and push for convenience, which we know is the convenience pushes profitability in certain areas. So
Yeah,
we're just kind of making them aware and wise consumers, and
yeah. That I love that. Yeah,
lessening the consumption as well, because we don't need that consumption if we're addressing and filling those holes of of connection, human connection and connection with the earth and everything like that, if we're giving them the appropriate opportunities and showing them and reminding them like, hey, do you remember how you felt when you were outside? Do you remember how that was, and that if they're able to identify it, you say, yeah, that's a good feeling. And we want more of that. So we give them, for lack of a better word, the right medicine or what they're seeking in the right areas versus consumerism, consuming this toy or this, extra candy or, anything like that. So
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I mean, even in Montessori, when you were running, it was always like low sugar treats, and it's opposite to just handing out candies for, okay, you did well, good job, you go, there you go, a candy for you, a reward driven, and it is a reward driven society, whether we want we like it or not. It takes so much to even think otherwise. Like, I don't want it to be reward driven, I want it to be naturally curiosity driven, rather than reward driven.
so humans are intrinsically motivated by nature to a certain extent, but then there's also external motivation too,
Mm,
by the
mm,
response in their environment as they grow, because we're wired to survive and we're wired to be,
yeah,
to make it. And not everybody's environment or their upbringing or their family life or is very, can be very unstable, or to a certain extent stable or less stable depending on what's going on. And so the point about the intrinsic motivation is that children are intrinsically motivated, and in Montessori we try to continue to foster that, because we know that they're going to get the external motivation from everywhere else, specifically in the culture. And then to take it a step further, it's about helping, those are my dogs, it's about helping the child to have the wisdom to know when to utilize, to tap into their intrinsic motivation and when to tap into extrinsic motivation. And that's a lifelong journey, because
mm,
we are still, even as adults, I can say that I'm driven by external motivation, and I have to have that awareness around
yeah,
that. So, no, I don't. No, I'm not. Yeah, they're sending me a 20% off coupon, but do I really need this? Or am I
hmm,
looking for that endorphin rush of purchasing something?
yes,
And why am I seeking out that endorphin rush? Did I work out today? Like,
yes, yes,
how
so
else
there's
can
so
I
much
fulfill
going on.
this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so that's just an example of that. And and we have a lot of sugar in our
That's a whole separate topic to
also
discuss.
my chocolate. My sister-in-law is from Sweden, and she said, gosh, your guys' food is just your breakfast. It's just all sugar, And so different cultures can definitely, reveal how much sugar, hyper sugared we are here in the United States. So, but yeah, that's a whole different topic. But
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and but I love that awareness part, where it's figuring that out. Even as adult, we have to keep doing that homework. It's like, it's almost like a skill. If you don't keep doing it, it just gets overridden by what we see around, right? Unless we isolate ourselves completely, you have to practice that skill, that okay, this is in my inner voice, it's telling me not say no to this because of my values, versus externally pushing buy this because it's a discount, it's a really good deal, and blah blah blah, and yeah. Uh, how do we balance that? It's just like without isolation, um it's also stress to keep practicing that matching my value, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
so there's that combination of the awareness, and then there's the combination of surrounding yourself by people with similar values,
Mm,
and giving them permission humbly, making sure that they're safe people no one's perfect, as we know this, but making sure that they're a safe person that you can confide in. I'm sure you can name Brene Brown is just a lot of research, data research on vulnerability, and she talks about having only about maybe 3 to 5 people, I want to say, that are your, which, well, she calls them move a body friend, but people that you can really confide in that align with you. And
Mm,
let's just say you have 3 really close friends, but they all have 3 different amazing skill sets about them. And you might lean into someone about this personal situation, and you might lean into another person about a professional situation. So you have, a few to choose from, to share information from, because you know that they'll best support you in that area.
mm,
Um, so I actually give my sons permission, when I'm working through something that I'm trying to unwind, that I learned, or a behavior that I learned as a child, that now I'm realizing was not the best practice, and I need to unwind that and unlearn and then relearn. I will um, I will tell my sons, I say, okay, when you see me do this, you have permission to kindly say, hey, mom, you're doing this right now. And then I will recheck myself. So
yeah.
so by doing that, I'm not only being humble and admitting that I'm making a mistake, but I'm also asking them for help. And in asking them for help, it helps me, but then also models for them how to ask for help and how to, work through
Mm-hmm.
these things, because here I am, in my 40s, and I'm still learning stuff and I'm still unlearning stuff. And I tell my sons all the time, hey guys, learn from my mistakes, because you're going to make plenty of your own. There's no reason for you to make the same mistakes I made.
Mm,
And I'm going to own my mistakes and understand and do my best to understand where they came from and how to unlearn, relearn, and how to move healthier forward in my life. So that's been a big process too. And selling the school had a big a big piece of that in there, because I needed to spend more time with my sons. Um, and I needed to, practice what I was preaching with my families,
mm-hmm.
and all those things.
Yeah.
And so I took a step back. And but the school went to wonderful hands, and so
Mm-hmm.
it was the right time for me to make those shifts for me personally, so that I could be a better mom, and be, you know better all around for myself. So it's a lot of personal growth and interrelational, growth with my sons. It's been great. I miss the community, but I'm still connected
Yeah.
with them. But
Mm-hmm.
but it was the time to do it. It was the season to do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. You started it, right? You were
correct.
the you designed all of those. That
Mhm.
was
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yes.
I love the haystacks in the back, at the back, and all the handmade seesaw and swing, and I think a tree house. It was beautiful. They were all made by different parents as well, right?
Mhm,
That,
mhm.
yeah.
Different parents, and we
Yeah.
always looked for natural items that we could use, um, resourced, refurbished, those types of things, so children could see that there could be a second life,
Mm,
something, second, third, fourth, fifth life to something, and you can reuse things, which is very countercultural
mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm.
our disposable society.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we were just trying to do what we felt aligned with, not only Montessori and the philosophy, but also, be a little counterculture in appropriate ways, that are would reflect being a good steward of the earth.
Right.
So
Right. Right. So how did you mentioned about I'm so glad you took time, for yourself, because that's the highest priority, that if we are peaceful inside, that's when we can give the best to the world as well. And spending time with your own kids, and I love that you made the best decision for yourself. But how I do wonder, my husband and I, we talk about it, like teachers and people who are very busy taking care of other children must be very stressful. um, and you have to go home and attend to your own kids as well, your own family. So how do you guys do it?
So it's been quite a journey for me. I can speak from my
Yeah.
own personal experience, and just by doing all this reflective work over the last year or so, I have learned that I actually have a lot of empathic traits. And when you're an empath, you tend to feel emotions of people. You tend to have a higher emotional IQ, just naturally you do. And you want to
Mm,
help people. You have this just deep desire to help people.
mm,
And with any strength like that, the awareness helped to learn some boundaries, because you want to pour out so much, but then you forget that you need to be pouring into yourself as well and have that
mm,
self-care. And there's a lot of talk about self-care around that's flying around over the last few years, and there's different levels of it for sure. But the self-care I'm talking about is the self-care that allows for me to have healthy boundaries so that I can get my workout in, because that fills
mm,
me. I can sit outside and look at the tree and watch its leaves blow. I mean, as simple as that. And that just fills me. And I need that. I need to fill my tank so that I can pour out onto other people. And there's a special balance between that, and there's no perfect recipe, because some people are more extrovert, more introvert, and relationships come into it. It's social work, so it's messy. It's
yeah,
messy,
yeah.
but the long and the short of it is, everyone has a different sense of what they need and what they need to pour into themselves versus seeking out from other people too.
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, the self-care was really, really big, and the boundaries are really big. So being a teacher, going back to, um, like I just love working with children. I love working with families. I pour myself into it because it just feels right to me. But I also had to have those boundaries over, like, um, telling parents, like, after 6 p.m. I don't look at my email anymore, because it's time for me to be with my family.
Yeah.
And in the event that it's an emergency, absolutely text me, like writing in their emergency, or emergency on, like the subject line of the of the email,
Email.
so that there would
Okay.
be some level of an ability for them to contact me if necessary, but that I would have my boundaries in place. And I can tell you, I can't even remember at this point, maybe once, where a parent, it was an emergency, and that's fine. I mean, one out of 100 plus parents in a year, times 10, so almost 1,000 parents, maybe, so it doesn't, but you have those boundaries, and that allows you to be able to not feel like you're divided. Also, working with other people's children is very different from working with your own. um,
Mm.
I call parenting like the Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love. And there's just such a bigger investment in your own children, at a deeper level, because of that connection you have with them. Um, and it's just a different dynamic. I absolutely love all children, and I love the students that I have had and will have in the future. And I absolutely do pour into them, and I think of them as my own, and I will protect them like a mama bear, like just like I will protect my own children like a mama bear. Um, but it is different. And people often will say to me, how can you spend all day with those children and then go home and be with yours? Like, it's
Correct. Yeah.
different. It's definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the pieces that I started to really miss for my own was that personal time, having the boundaries of the
Mm.
personal time around. So now I literally block in time for myself, so that I can make sure that I'm in tip top shape, because if I'm not in tip top shape, then I can't pour out the way I need to, but then
Yeah.
also giving myself that forgiveness and that grace and that mercy and communication with my boys, saying, hey, I'm really not feeling well, so I'm going to go and lay down. If you need anything, let me know. But if you could just give me some time, or let's figure something out now so that X, Y, and Z can happen. but I'm just letting you know I won't be able to help you as much as I might have been in the past because I'm not feeling awesome right now. So
Mhm.
just communication, lots of over communication, which I think drives my sons crazy because they're not designed as well to communicate. That's one of the differences in the genders. Not, I'm not stereotyping, it just happens to be more like that. And just having that awareness of that as well is super important to be able to connect with my boys and
Right.
do all those things I need to do
Yeah.
with them to help
Right.
prepare them to be successful in life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love it. I love understanding that, it's a different thing when you connect deeper with your own kids, definitely. And not having the boundaries is the key, like any other profession that we have today. That was fun. I had a lot of reflective moments talking to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and I really liked about ecotherapy. I wish there's something more slowing down for adults as well, designed, specifically designed. We have, I think, mindfulness, and that's in today's market, right? Mindfulness, take um, sustainable lifestyle, work life balance. So, but this sounds a bit more different than maybe the terminology versus the philosophy behind it, or the core message that it's communicating.
yeah, and it's all based in nature versus just maybe sitting in your living room and just, having a meditative state.
Hmm.
So it is different. But I like to think of it as another opportunity or another tool for the tool chest to be able to, have that as as not only an option, but have as a regular ingredient in your dish, so to speak, of self of
Mm.
self-care and also healing, healing in areas too. So
Yeah. Thank you.
you're
Thank you
so
so much.
welcome. You're so welcome. Thank you for having me, and I'm hopeful to talk with you in the future as I learn more too, because I'll continue to learn a lot more about ecotherapy and
Yeah.
where it goes and what new discoveries we find and all those things. So always learning, super important.
We'll catch up again. We'll have you again and learn more from you. So thanks for sharing.
Sounds great. Thank you again.